This story is generated and narrated by AI. If you notice any glitches in the voice, feel free to leave a comment. Your feedback helps improve future videos. Now, imagine moving into a new place and discovering that someone has been watching you through a window. Would you stay or would you run? I never planned to move here, to this city where the air smells like concrete dust and the tram wires always hum. Even at night, I told myself it was a fresh start, new job, new place, a chance to forget everything I'd left behind. But you can't always choose what follows you. The flat was on the third floor of a crumbling gray building in the old part of town, the kind with chipped stairwells and frosted glass hallway windows that never quite let in enough light. There was no elevator, just a wrought iron banister polished smooth by decades of hands. My apartment was small, one bedroom, high ceilings, creaky floorboards. It smelled faintly of old paper and metal, but it had a window tall, square, and perfectly aligned with the building across the street. That building, that was where everything began. From the first evening, I noticed it, directly across from mine, only a few meters between us, another building, taller, darker. It looked abandoned. Windows boarded or shattered, its facade scorched black in places like there had once been a fire. I asked the landlord about it when I moved in. He just said, "That place has been sealed for years. No one goes in. No one comes out. You'll get used to it." I didn't press. A week passed. I settled in, unpacked boxes, started my new job at the translation agency near Masterikova Street. I spent my nights reading or walking down to the market for late coffee and cigarettes. Life was quiet, quiet enough that I noticed when something changed. It was around 2 a.m. I'd been reading by the window. There was a gentle rain falling, soft enough to turn the city into watercolor. That's when I saw it, a shape in the building across the street. It stood in the window directly opposite mine, perfectly still, a silhouette, faint and dark against the dusty glass. It wasn't moving, wasn't doing anything, just standing there, watching. I stared back, half expecting it to be a trick of the light, some shadow or optical illusion. But no matter how long I watched, the figure didn't vanish. It didn't move either. Eventually, I laughed it off, told myself I was tired, imagined it. I closed the curtain. The next night, it was there again. Same window, same position, still, unmoving. I turned off the light in my flat and stood behind the curtain, trying to see more clearly. But it was too dark. The city lights didn't reach that far. And the windows on the opposite building were too filthy for any real detail. All I could make out was the shape, the suggestion of a person. Days passed. Every night, the figure returned. I stopped telling myself it was in my head. I began writing down the times I saw it. 2:03 a.m. 1:58 a.m. 2:11 a.m. Always around the same hour. Never earlier. I took photos, but they captured nothing. Just a black window with nothing behind it. I told a coworker about it once, casually, like a joke. "You should get out more," she said. "You're starting to sound like one of those late-night forums, urban legends and insomnia." Maybe she was right. I started sleeping with the curtains drawn, but even then, even when I wasn't looking, I could feel it, like eyes pressing against the back of my skull. I started dreaming of being watched, waking up with my heart pounding, sheets tangled around me like restraints. One night, I decided to look again. It wasn't raining this time. The moon was high and clear, painting sharp contrasts on the buildings. I turned off my lights, stood by the glass. The figure was there. But this time, it was closer to the window than before. No longer a faint shadow. Its shoulders were now more defined, its head tilted slightly to one side. still no face, just a void where features should have been. It was like looking into a person-shaped hole in the world. I stepped back from the window. For the first time, I felt fear settle in my chest. Not the jump scare kind, but something slower, colder, the kind that seeps into your bones. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I crossed the street. I told myself I was just going to check the building, see if it really was empty. The front door was chained shut, though it splintered and weathered. No way anyone had used it in years. All the windows were either broken or sealed with black plastic, except for that one, the one directly across from mine. It was intact, but smudged with grime, too dirty to see inside. I walked around the block, looking for any other entrance. Nothing. The building was boxed in by taller ones. No alley, no rear access. It was as though the place had been forgotten, not just abandoned. That night, I stayed away from the window, sat in the kitchen with the door closed, all the lights on. I even played music, something to drown out the silence. But around 2:10 a.m., I heard something, a soft tapping, gentle, rhythmic, like fingers on glass. I didn't move for a long time. Then slowly, I got up, walked to the window, hands shaking as I peeled back the curtain. The figure was still across the street, but now, its hand was raised, palm pressed against the inside of the glass, as though it was mirroring me. I didn't sleep for 2 nights after that. I kept the curtains shut, tried to keep my eyes away from anything that might reflect that window, but I could feel it, a presence growing heavier with each passing night, like the silence was watching me. It's hard to explain, but something had changed. Before, the figure had been distant, but after it raised its hand to the glass, it felt like an invitation or a warning, and I wasn't sure which terrified me more. I started avoiding my own flat after dark. I'd stay at cafes until closing, take long walks through unfamiliar neighborhoods, anything to delay going home, but I always came back. Eventually, I had to, and every night, it was there. One evening, something strange happened. I was coming up the stairs, 3rd floor, exhausted. That's when I noticed it. My front door was slightly ajar. I froze, stood there for what felt like hours, listening, but there was nothing. No creak of floorboards, no shifting air. I pushed the door open. Everything looked the same. Nothing was missing, nothing broken, nothing obviously touched, but the air felt wrong, colder, denser, like something had just left the room. I walked straight to the window. The figure was gone. That absence should have made me feel better. It didn't. Instead, I felt exposed, like I'd arrived a moment too late to see someone slip out of view. That was the first night I heard the footsteps. It started at exactly 2:17 a.m., soft, slow, deliberate, like someone walking in the flat above mine, but the floorboards above were too old to carry weight silently. Each step echoed down to the ceiling, followed by a faint creak, like shifting weight. But here's the thing, there's no apartment above me. The 4th floor was destroyed in the fire decades ago. My landlord had told me it was never rebuilt. It was just roof and sky. I went to the window. The figure was back, but now, it wasn't facing me. Its body was turned sideways, as if looking down the hallway inside that building, like it was watching for someone. That was when I realized something. It was closer again. It had moved slightly forward, not much, but enough that I could see more of its outline. Its shoulders seemed too broad, its neck slightly too long, its proportions just a little off. Whatever it wasn't pretending to be human anymore. The next day, I made an excuse at work and took the morning off. I went to the city records office. I needed to know more about the building across from mine. The clerk was an older man with yellowed glasses and a voice like dry leaves. He frowned when I gave him the address. That place again, he muttered. He brought out a thin file, surprisingly thin for a structure that had stood for almost a century. Inside were black and white photographs, a few reports, and one article, yellowed and brittle. The fire had happened in 1974. Top floor engulfed. Cause listed as unknown electrical fault. 3 people were confirmed dead, but one name stood out. Emil Harvanek, age unknown, described as a quiet man who rarely left his room. There was a handwritten note in the margin, smudged and nearly illegible, something about unusual behavior reported by neighbors, and a line circled in red. He kept every curtain shut except one. The window directly across from mine. I copied what I could, took photos of the pages on my phone, but it only raised more questions. That night, I sat at the window. I didn't turn the lights off. I wanted it to see me, and I spoke. I don't even remember what I said, just fragments. Who are you? What do you want? Why me? It didn't move, didn't blink, just stood there, still as a painting. But then, at exactly 2:37 a.m., it did something it had never done before. It smiled. A long, slow, unnatural curve spreading across where its face should have been, like the glass itself was warping, bending around something that shouldn't be there. I fell backward, heart hammering, and for the first time, I screamed. I packed a bag that night. I didn't care about the lease. I didn't care about work. I needed to leave. But when I opened the door, there was something on the floor outside, a piece of old, yellowed paper, folded in half. I picked it up with trembling fingers. There was only one sentence written in dark, smeared ink. You looked first. I didn't sleep again that night. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that smile pressed against the glass, that curve of darkness, too wide, too patient. And that note, you looked first. Those 3 words repeated in my mind like a song stuck in a broken record. Was that the trigger? Had I invited it just by noticing? By looking too long? I booked a hotel across the city, a faceless chain, somewhere anonymous, no windows that faced old buildings, no view of anything but a brick wall. I thought distance would help. I was wrong. The second night in the hotel, I woke up to the sound of glass tapping, slow, deliberate, like fingers on a window pane. The problem was my window didn't open. I turned on the lamp, approached the curtain. I didn't want to look, but I had to. I pulled the fabric aside. Nothing, just bricks and shadow. And then, I saw it, the reflection on the glass, not outside it, a faint outline, behind me, not in the room, but layered into the surface of the pane. It was there, inside the reflection, standing just behind my shoulder, motionless, watching. I didn't turn around. I ran. The hotel staff thought I was on something. I didn't care. I just kept moving, from place to place, short-term stays, overnight rentals, even once a hostel where I stayed awake all night among strangers. But no matter where I went, at 2:37 a.m., the presence returned, sometimes in a window, sometimes in a mirror, sometimes in the darkness just outside my line of sight. I started to lose time. One morning I found myself standing on a train platform on the other side of town. I had no memory of getting there. Another time, I woke up with dust on my shoes and soot on my hands. I checked my phone. A photo had been taken at 2:37 a.m. just a ceiling fan spinning slowly, but in the corner, barely visible, the reflection of a face. It wasn't mine. I tried to speak to someone about it, a therapist, a friend from work, even a priest once, but the words felt wrong in my mouth. Like every time I tried to describe it, my tongue went numb, my thoughts fogged up. I'd leave the conversations dazed and ashamed, like I'd shared something cursed. Weeks passed. I was running out of money, running out of places to hide, and worse than the sightings, worse than the dreams, was the growing certainty that whatever this thing was, it was getting closer. One night, I found myself back near the old neighborhood. I hadn't meant to go there, but my feet took me. I stood across the street from the building again. The window was dark, but I could feel it. It was waiting. I don't know what possessed me. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe it was madness. But I crossed the street, and I walked inside. The front door of the abandoned building gave way with a reluctant groan. Inside, the air was stale, filled with the smell of ash and damp wood. I climbed the stairs, step by step, each floor colder than the last. I reached the third level, the one that matched my old flat. The door at the end of the hall stood slightly open. I pushed it. Inside, nothing but shadows and ruin. The floorboards were warped, the wallpaper peeled in long, curling strips, and across the room, directly opposite the window, stood a single, high-backed chair facing me. I approached it. The room was silent, not dead silent, but listening silent, like the building itself was holding its breath. I reached out and touched the back of the chair. It was warm. I stepped around it and saw what sat in it. Not a person, not even a corpse, but a kind of shape, a human form, sculpted in shadow, unmoving, without features, except for one thing. It had no face, only the impression of one, like a mask pressed into damp clay, left behind to harden. And as I stared at it, it tilted its head. Not quickly, not menacingly, just slowly, like a curious animal. And then it raised one arm, a finger, bony, endless, pointing. Not at me, but at the window. I turned and saw the reflection, not of the figure, not of the chair, but of myself. Standing there, but the reflection didn't match. It was smiling. A long, slow, unnatural smile. And then the glass cracked, a long fracture running down its center like a wound. I ran. I don't even remember leaving. But when I got home, my apartment was just as I left it, except for one thing. On the inside of my bedroom window, pressed from the inside, was a handprint. Still fresh. I didn't sleep that night either, but not out of fear. Something had changed, something subtle, but absolute. It wasn't just that I'd seen the thing, it was that it had seen me. And not through glass, not from across the street. It had looked directly into me, like it knew the patterns of my thoughts, like it had walked the rooms of my memory. The next morning, the handprint was gone, as if it had never been there, but I knew better. I began to make changes, small ones at first. I covered all my mirrors, removed reflective surfaces, I avoided windows after dark, and most of all, I never, ever looked at the building again. Weeks passed. I returned to a rhythm of normalcy. Work, groceries, laundry. I even smiled once in a while, but it never fully left the knowledge that if I let my guard down, even for a moment. If I allowed myself to glance, it would be there, watching. Then came the letter. No return address, no markings, just my name, handwritten in that same scratchy, angular scrawl. Inside was a single photograph. It showed me sleeping in my bed. The timestamp, 2:37 a.m. I didn't scream. I didn't panic. I burned the photo, then I packed. I left the city that night. No destination, just away. Someplace where buildings didn't stack on top of one another like carcasses. Someplace where windows opened to forests, not corridors of silence. I rented a cabin in the north, far from towns, far from glass, and I started to rebuild. I wrote, I drew, I chopped wood and let the cold bite my hands. And for a time, it worked. No more whispers, no more reflections, no more 2:37. But one night, deep in winter, as snow piled high against the cabin walls, I was reading by the fire, a book about old rituals and forgotten names, and something tugged at the edge of my vision. I looked up and saw the window. Just one, small, narrow, set high near the ceiling, built for light, not for looking. The snow outside clung to the glass in thick, crooked lines, but in the corner, barely visible, there was a shadow. Not moving, not looming, just waiting. I closed the book, stood up, and walked to the window. And I said something aloud for the first time in months. I know you're still watching. I pressed my hand to the glass. The cold stung my skin, but I didn't look away. And for a moment, I thought I saw movement, a flicker of shape beyond the snow, a shift in the dark. But nothing more. And that was enough. I turned back to the fire, and I kept living. Because survival isn't about winning, it's about enduring. And some things you don't defeat, you just learn how to live without feeding them. I don't look at windows anymore, but sometimes I feel them looking at me. If you enjoyed this story, leave a comment below. Would you dare confront what's behind the window, or would you pretend it's not there? Don't forget to like and subscribe, because in the next video, you might be the one being watched.